Welcome back to Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Now, last week, the NGO Coordination Board acted against two prominent NGOs, AFRICOG and the Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHRC. The attempt was to deregister them, raid their offices, and freeze their bank accounts. In response to the national and international outrage that ensued, the acting Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, stopped the action and formed a committee to probe the compliance of both organizations. This focus on civil society organizations in the governance space is becoming part of our electoral landscape. And so today's guests are government spokesman Eric Kiraide and human rights lawyer Njonjo Mue, who has a long career in civil society. And before the break, we were coming to the issue of funding. Njonjo, and the question that Mutegi had asked you was, you know, how it is that certain NGOs find themselves, you know, heavily funded by people who are associated with a regime change. In this case, the multi-millionaire George Soros of the Open Society Foundations. And I think, Charles, you were coming in to question the financing.
I was just drawing it back down memory lane. Remember during the second Kenya president's reign, Mzee Daniel Moi, there was a lot of funding, and the panel here agrees to that effect. There was a lot of funding.
And Mutegi reminded us that the funding was channeled to civil society because of government corruption.
Yes, and mainly, of course, there was the issue of the unspoken issue of regime change. And now we are seeing a situation where, again, NGOs and these organizations that fight for civil rights are getting a lot of money from certain sources, albeit to champion for people's rights and all the rest. And we forget that in this document, the Constitution, unlike before, it starts by saying, we the people of Kenya. It gives rights to every Kenyan. The voiceless during Moi's reign now have a voice through this document. And this document is touted as one that grants the most rights to human beings in Kenya. So why then do we still need funding to civil societies if it's not what Eric says to destabilize a system?
I think the thing that we haven't said here is that in 2013, AFRICOG did go to court to challenge the results of the election, and you know, some of these NGOs are apparently involved in the current petition against the election results. Would you agree?
AFRICOG was actually rumored to be preparing to go to court again this time.
No, not rumored. Even the former Prime Minister said so, that they went to court when the civil society organizations won and disorganized, which leads me to ask a question. I must admit, I do work for AFRICOG. I do train the journalists in investigative journalism program. But if it is a company, I won't maybe it's a company, whatever. A company is a company. I'm assuming companies are supposed to make money. How do you make money by going to court?
So that's quite a issue. Yeah.
Let me just I was going to say educate you, but you're my senior.
No, I would like to.
Not all companies are registered for the purpose of making money. The ones that are registered for making a profit are companies limited by shares, which are some traded in the stock exchange, but some are private companies. But there are companies limited by guarantee, which are not-for-profit companies. And there are many non-governmental organizations which in this country right now, we have different regimes of registration. You can register as a trust, some are registered as societies, some are registered as companies limited by guarantee, and others are registered as NGOs. And all those are recognized legal regimes for registration and regulating these organizations. So speaking for AFRICOG, AFRICOG is a company limited by guarantee, which it means, in another way of putting it, it's a not-for-profit independent organization. So it has, that is just a registration regime. But in actuality, it's a collection of like-minded individuals, citizens, which as I said at the beginning of this show, have a right under this constitution to organize, to mobilize, and to do everything that is allowed by the constitution, especially our Bill of Rights. I want to respond also to what Mutegi was saying earlier about regime change. You know, regime change has become one of these phrases which somebody only needs to state, and then you are tainted by the fact that you're trying to overthrow the government. We don't have a regime change agenda.
What about
NGOs don't have a regime
George Soros? Does he come in anyway?
George Soros is a financier, like what is he's the Kenyan even like Mr. Mashari, I'm sure there are people who approach him to fund causes.
Certain causes.
Certain causes. Some people, some businessmen.
Look, he's not here to defend himself,
yes.
And so let's not get drawn into that. But the broader point, really, is that there are people who fund, which is Mutegi's point, that there are people who fund certain outcomes. And you have talked about independence and like-minded individuals. Now, why should Kenyans believe that your independence, that there is independence as a value when you see that there are political leanings? Well, individuals within NGO, in fact, some NGOs align themselves with different political groupings. So how, therefore, are you independent?
Let me say this, first of all. As citizens, all of us have political persuasions. All of us here, we all voted on the 8th of August, and we all voted one way or another. Okay? So the fact that I voted for Ekuru Aukot, for instance, and then I work for ICJ, for instance, you cannot then say ICJ supports Ekuru Aukot. Okay? So independence of the institutions that we work for, of the organizations we work for, must be seen in light of what the organization says, its mandate, its constitution, and how it is run and operated, rather than looking at Njonjo, Odwak, Charles, and saying that these people are not.
That is a narrow definition, Njonjo, because if you hadn't said who you may or may not have voted for, we would never have known. But what tends to happen is that you see, and I think you, Mutegi, you were pointing out, that the former Prime Minister himself has said that AFRICOG is working with us. And so within our political landscape, you are therefore aligning yourself to a political dispensation and to a political outcome.
I'd like to correct you. The former Prime Minister did not say Africa is working with us. His statement, he said that there were organizations that may have been preparing to go to court, which have now been totally disrupted by the events of last week. That's the former Prime Minister's words. And I wasn't there. I don't know him. I've never met him. I cannot speak for him or guess what he meant. I can speak for the organizations that we work for, including AFRICOG and KHRC. As citizens, we have a right. Every voter, the 19 million of us, have a right to petition the court against the election outcomes, which is why AFRICOG went to court in 2013, because they went as a group of voters. In fact, it was 2 voters who went and represented AFRICOG in court, and that we cannot apologize about. It's not that the fact that we challenged. In fact, in 2013. The AFRICOG petition did not go there seeking one or other outcome. It went there very specifically on issues of process, challenging the Electoral Commission about the changing figures in the voter register, about the collapse of the technology, and all those other things. And those are things that any individual citizen has a right to go before the court to get clarified.
Mr. Kirazi.
We are laboring under the weight of dishonesty here, and I would have wished to ask how many of these billions which are supposed to fund civil society go to the ordinary Kenyan, but I will speak to 2 issues. The issue of regime change. This is a simple word which is meant to carry a lot of weight. No one in government is afraid of regime change. The constitution is very clear about how a regime change is supposed to happen. It is through a democratic electoral process which the government of Kenya, the President of the Republic, has submitted himself to, and as late as yesterday, he was saying, we are waiting for the court to decide. So, do a regime change, Jojo, get money to do a regime change, but follow the constitution and the laws of this country. Then the issue of contribution. Money for regime change is called campaign funds. If you are bringing money to campaign for any person and you are free to do it, follow the law and kindly and honestly state, I am bringing money to campaign for Kiraithe to remove Jonjo or Mutegi. It is happening in the counties, it is happening in governance. Don't hide under 100 governance terms or limited by guarantee or that. We don't need that as a country in Jonjo. What we need and what I would want our audience to know today is that regime change is provided for in our constitution very expressly, and electoral laws It is not supposed to be funded by some George Soros or any other business for that matter. There is a system to do it. And if you are an individual, an organization, you want to bring in money to support a political party, they need this money. There is a way of raising those funds. So let us not labor under the weight of dishonesty, taking 100 corners. What we need to say here is that the government of Kenya respects the will of Kenyans, supports democracy, and is the greatest underwriter and defender of human rights in this country, because it is the responsibility given to it by the supreme will of the Kenyan citizens.
But if that is true, why hasn't the PBO Act been operationalized?
Well, I am not somebody who drafts laws.
The law has been passed.
This is a law that has been passed.
Let me tell you that Jonjo will even be better telling us this.
But he doesn't speak for the government.
At every stage, laws are read, looked into, administrative factors are also considered. I am not armed with particular information. Why that the Public Benefits Act?
Public Benefits Act?
And
part of the reason,
why it has
clarify.
not been operationalized, give me next Wednesday. I'll go and look at it, and I'll give an answer, because Kenyans deserve a good answer.
So for the benefit of our viewers, you will know that, and Georgia has alluded to this, that there are different legal regimes for the various organizations working under the purview of NGOs. And what the Public Benefits Act did was it streamlined all of that, gave a clear and consistent registration regime, had guidelines around financing, which you've talked about, whether it's donations or campaign financing. There have been attempts to make it a bit more stringent. There have been court orders mandating the operationalization of the law. Sorry, I'm struggling. The weight of the panel. But none have been followed. The current CS for devolution attempted to bring this into effect, and what then happened was that the oversight of NGOs was then moved to the Interior Ministry.
And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, this act outlaws the national non-governmental organizations coordinating board and Mr. Fazul's office, essentially.
Yes.
So here is a situation where an act of parliament cannot be operationalized. An illegal office is allowed to operate.
So, if the government, as you say, if one law, a new law has not been operationalized, there is always another one. They call it is it succession, whatever. But what I want to make clear here is that let us not divert from the issue of campaign funding. We saw several dinners held where people.
But you have a law that would clear up any sort of ambiguity.
The current systems existing, what I want to put across, are adequate to ensure that any campaign person can raise funds for their campaigns. I have not had a political party, unless we seem to know more about political parties, that they were not able to raise funds for their candidate because the PBA has not been operationalized. Like I said, we shall get a good statement on this. We shall give the government as a responsibility to give very clear clarification on this, because what I know for sure is that there must be concerns, there must be structures that are not in place to operationalize. The government does not act as individuals. Remember, I'm in government today, I might not be there tomorrow. And I don't see anything in that act. I went through it once, and I did not get
Yes, we are. Jonjo, go ahead, please.
Yeah, can I just say, I'm wondering how we ended up where we are right now, discussing campaign financing and regime change, because none of the NGOs that I'm associated with and I work with have purported to receive money for political activities. So that is itself a diversion. Coming back to the
weight of dishonesty.
I'll be more polite than coming back to the PBO Act. NGOs up until 2013 were operating under the NGO Coordination Act, under which Mr. Fazul and the board purport to act. The Public Benefits Organizations Act was developed collaboratively between government and civil society between 2011-2012. Eventually it was passed by Parliament. It was assented to by the President Moi Kibaki on the 12th of January 2013, and it was supposed to come into operation shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, when the Jubilee government came to power in April, they stopped the operation and instead tried to amend it to muzzle civil society by capping funding to civil society to 15%. Okay,
foreign funding.
Yes, and for the last 4 years, we've been struggling to say this law needs to come into operation. So, as you said earlier, to harmonize the sector, and also to bring it into line with the 2010 Constitution. Now, the sector went to court in August 2015. The court ruled in October 2016 that the act should be brought into operation within 14 days, and that order was directed to the CS for devolution. As he was trying to do that, the docket was moved to internal security. The sector went back to court again, and in May this year, again got orders directed at CS for internal security, giving him 30 days to operationalize the act. 30 days have come and gone, and that hasn't happened yet. So the government is in contempt. The NGO Coordination Board is illegal. Mr. Fazul's position is non-existent, but they are still using a 1990 law, which was brought into force to control and muzzle civil society, just as we were pushing for multipartism, to continue trying to control us now in the 21st century. That is completely unacceptable.
What does Mr. Bebe say about that?
What I will say about that is that having been served with the government for a very long time, I want to assure Njonjo and the people seated here, if you see successive cabinet secretaries reluctant, if you see our parliament quiet, it is unfortunate that this information is not in public domain. There must be very good reasons. And don't think about your own political disposition and what you believe as a person.
What are the good reasons, though?
Remember that one of the reasons which brought a lot of alarm in these civil society organizations, because they come in all shapes and sizes, in terms of churches, in terms of religion and all that, is mainly funding to violent radicalization, violent extremism. You have seen this is an international matter. I don't want to go into that very much, but you have seen 5 governments ganging up to isolate a sister government or a brother government, that is Qatar. And these things are not, the government has a responsibility, as I've said, to make itself very clear into the courts, because there can't be perceivable factors that even the courts cannot understand. But as I have said, I will do my own research. I will go to the government departments, find out what is the issue, and we share it with Kenyans, because the Constitution says every information held by the government should be there in public interest. But don't think about politics. Politics are due to end in a very short while, but we have a country to continue running until we hand it over to our children and grandchildren.
Mr. Karai, let me say this. How does Mr. Karai justify that attack or that raid at Africa that morning by Kenya people, the police? If you want about tax, anything about tax, including my tax.
Yes.
The police will never come to my office with police.
KRA,
they will not come with the police.
KRA has an investigative arm, and they go with police to protect the investigators. Let me make it very clear here, Mutegi. If I think you have information which you might hide if I give you notice, simple investigations, then it will be in the interest of truth. And let me make it very clear. Let me make it very clear to you, because there are words we have demonized. Investigations are always good for a civil citizen. What AFRICOG should be saying now is that they came, we gave them all the documents they had, and they have found we are compliant. Don't go to court. I have never understood anybody who goes to court to stop the investigations against themselves. Maybe because I've been a policeman, I've been written hundreds of statements. I have had to exonerate myself to account for myself on several issues. So, Jonjo, if KRA comes to your office tomorrow, just tell them, be gentle, be civil, do what you want.
Supporting an alternative.
I'm not Mr. Kirede, because KRA did not come. First of all, they had no notice, as Mutagi is saying. But secondly, in the specific case of AFRICOM, they came with armed policemen and 3 vans, demanding to take away computers, files, and anything and everything that moved except maybe the
on the direction of the NGO coordination board.
And the point I made much earlier is that KRA is an independent institution, and what we are seeing right now is what used to happen in the Moi days, where independent institutions such as the judiciary will be instrumentalized by the state, and you will get a judge being called at night to go and sentence people accused of Makenya to jail. How did KRA get entangled and allow itself to actually be given orders by Fazul, which order it doesn't have the power to give, and then just show up without notice with a document purported to be from the court which has irregularities on the face of it, and come with 3 vans and say they are here to take computers and files? Even now, if you came to my house and told me to do that, I wouldn't allow you to get in.
Charles?
Mine is a very simple question. Banakiraide told us earlier about the law being very precise and concise on regime change. And if you do anything outside the law, that's an illegal.
I find this use of regime rather questionable.
No. If you do anything outside the law, then it's illegal. Here is a situation where we have a law, the Public Benefits Organizations Act 2013. It's not a bill. It's a law. It supersedes any other law that was there, the National Non-Governmental Organizations Coordination Board thing and all the rest. How then does the government use an illegality to exercise a legality? If Fazul is in office illegally because there is a law that rendered him illegal, how does the police and the KRA follow his instructions to go and raid an office of a registered organization?
Mr. Kirede?
These are very simple things. We have a lot of interest in politics. What I would want to tell you is that, Charles, next time you go to Kilimani police station and you report that you think your phone is lost and it is in my house, and police come to look for it, they will not be acting, to simplify it, under your instructions. They will be investigating a complaint which has been duly made. I won't pretend to know all the details, because as a government spokesman I wanted to tell people about government policy and not about AFRICOM, one organization.
But we are asking.
But the way I understand it, the policy is, if Fazul, because he is still in existence, illegally, wrote a letter and he said, I think somebody is evading taxes, there was every responsibility for KRA.
First of all, the police should have arrested him for impersonating.
The first thing I want to do, just if you have an issue,
no, I'm just asking. No. It's nothing personal.
No, give him a call after this, and
he's a government spokesperson. He could
but as the government, what I would want to tell you is this, and I want to be very clear and very firm. NGOs will not be allowed in this country to operate in a manner that the citizen of Kenya has zero oversight. And no government will do that. Whichever government you think about, Njonjo told us we are not China, we are not United States either, we are not some other government, but everybody bringing money has an interest. Nobody pays money without an interest unless we believe in a free cup of tea. And if you are bringing 1 billion shillings in Kenya, we must know what is your interest. All the government is asking is very simple. The policy is this: if you are offended by investigations, if you go to some of the biggest spending Treasury is always querying, is compensation paid to corporate and individual citizens for wrongful acts by individuals in government. And I don't want to belabor that. the fact of the matter is that if you purport something to be illegal, don't start saying politics, tribe, and all that. The government is impartial. The government is perpetual. It is not loyal to an individual. It is loyal to institutions, and we shall remain that way. That is how we draw our legitimacy.
So, in terms of legitimacy, therefore, going back to Charles's question, how do you have an illegal entity trying to execute legalities? How do you have an individual whose own qualifications are deemed to be questionable occupying an office that he is deemed unfit for, executing legalities over legally constituted entities?
Until the PBO is operationalized, the NGO Coordination Board shall remain legal. That is one thing. The next thing I want to tell you is that questions on individual qualifications in our times are not unique to Fazul. There are very many institutions, there are very many individuals, elected individuals, where these questions have been asked. And until the due process is completed, we shall not, and the government will not act in that. And no institution is doing it. Even the IBC do not do it. You talk about everything you want. Every person is entitled by that constitution Jonjo is having there to fair administrative and judicial processes.
Can I?
We have to take a break now. Let's take the break and come back to that. This is Cheche, and we're live on Citizen TV. Send us your thoughts about the future of civil society in Kenya. Human rights defenders in particular. Our SMS number is 22422, and you can reach us on Twitter using the hashtag Cheche.